welcome to Slayerfest 98. I'm Ian Carlos Crawford.
I'm Ashley Hullett.
I'm Laz Marquez.
I'm Meredith Goldstein, and today we're going to be talking about the body and grief and do a little exploration.
Meredith, I love when you come in, it automatically sounds like NPR level, like good sound.
I'm well spoken and good NPR sound for like 35 seconds, and then I'll start burping and sneezing. Just don't worry.
Yeah, so we had all talked about doing this episode. I feel like I've been talking about the body for like a month now straight. It hit 25 years, which also is bananas. Even watching this episode, it still feels like pretty modern. Like it doesn't feel dated. I don't know.
Yeah.
And we've all been through our own version of this. And I feel like it's kind of a credit to the episode, right? That all of us can be like, yeah, it still does feel, it doesn't feel like, I don't know. I was thinking about how the first time I watched it, this is like one of my more ridiculous Buffy stories. I had strep throat and FX used to put up all the episodes. And it was I don't know why, it was the last episode I had not seen yet. It was either that or Killed by Death. But I remember like looking up on the FX website schedule to be like, oh, they're playing the body at 8 a.m. tomorrow. I'll wake up early and watch it. And I had fucking strep throat and I'm sitting in my bed just like weeping and snotty and so gross. And I remember feeling like 10 times sicker after watching it. Because, maybe not the best time to watch it for the first time.
Right.
And, that was before I had really had any loss. I don't know if any of y'all like remember the first time you watched it.
I surely don't. I was very young.
Ashley just called us old.
Yeah, I think the first time that I saw the body was literally when it aired. So the stinger at the end of the episode right prior, I was already like, oh no.
Yeah.
So like there was almost like a little bit of prep that I could remember, again, especially watching it in like live time.
Yeah.
And at that point I hadn't really lost any like family members or anything, but it was still so like torturous because those characters, and to a certain extent, Joyce became kind of like a family figure.
Yeah.
You know, when you're like a latchkey kid and you grow up with like these shows teaching you life lessons, you gain a certain like level of attachment that is somewhat indescribable, especially with these kind of episodes. So like that's what I recall the most, just sitting there by myself because no one else liked Buffy. I was like the weirdo.
It's so funny, all of us have that experience of not knowing other people that like Buffy, and here we are 25 years later. Meredith, do you remember?
So one thing I was realizing as I was preparing for this is that I always say, oh, well, when I first saw it, I know I really loved it. I'm not entirely sure I can give myself credit for that. I think I was watching it on FX probably, or wherever was doing the repeats at that point. I had an opportunity in college to be watching Buffy in real time with people who loved it, and having no information about it whatsoever, I was like, I assumed there was some sort of misogynist look at a woman who was blonde and kicking. Like I didn't know anything about it, and I had no Google, or not today's standard. So it wasn't
especially back then. That's not a crazy assumption.
Especially because what I find fascinating is the guys who were watching it, they were straight men at my college newspaper, and they were like really into it, and I just assumed the worst of them. So later when I found it, I was like, I remember texting them at that point and saying, this is quite good, or maybe calling them. I know that when I got to season 5, these repeats were before work. So I'm watching them at 7 a.m, right? And season 5 started to bum me out, which is hilarious now because season 6 is
right.
What bum a person out. But Riley was starting to drag for me. And I think that when Joyce got sick, I was like, this is, I had not lost a family member. My grandparents were still alive. I also just felt like this show is doing something, and I miss high school. So I didn't dislike these episodes, but I don't have the exact memory of the body because I think I was getting frustrated that I just wanted them to do a school play that was haunted again or something. Now, fast forward, I often rewatched the first 3 seasons. I'm certain I saw it again and really appreciated the cinematography of it and the choices about it. Seeing it maybe a year or two, I think a year after my mom died, and just a rewatch, I was like, is anybody seeing this? It felt like I was watching the episode for the first time.
Yeah.
That I had not truly gotten what they were doing until that moment.
Yeah. I actually can remember after I found Chris and having the fully worst day of my entire life, coming home and not watching the episode, but watching the monologues. Like I watched the Summer Geller's, like the post credits, like one shot, which chills me every time. And then I watched Anya's, Willow's monologue and Anya's. And I think I've watched Anya's like 4 times. And because I remember posting a GIF of Anya's speech, and I remember I remember who it was, but I'm not gonna say their names. They're very nice, and they didn't know what was going on, and they were like, "Jesus Christ, Ian, why are you trying to bum us all out?" And like, they had no idea why I was posting that, and I didn't reply either because like well, my friend's dead. I haven't said it yet, and I can remember like feeling both comfort but also like wanting to barf, and even like y'all said, even before I had any loss, it was so sad. Before I had lost someone, I still would skip this in a rewatch, not because it's bad, just because it's like so sad, right? And now I definitely skip it in a rewatch. This honestly, when we recorded for I Was Made to Love You, I stopped when she walked in the house. I was like, great, I don't need to watch the rest of this. I'm good. And that's usually what I do if I'm doing a rewatch. I'll stop. Even if it's like a background while I'm doing something, I'll be like, all right, once she walked into that house, I'm stopping it because I don't want to see this. And I'll skip the episode after it as well, because it's really good, but it's just so sad when she's talking to Dawn. And I thought it's weird. I think a lot about that. And in my brain, even though I know it's not, I think of her saying, who's going to take care of us? I think of that. And it reminds me of the body, but it's not in the body. But I think of that a lot, that line, even though I'm a 43-year-old adult. And like, especially because they don't look she's 19. If that's supposed to be 19, maybe 20. She looks more adult. Not that she looks old, but so it always feels like it's an adult saying it, is how I take it. And I do think it's written that way. It's not supposed to be like, well, this is a kid who doesn't know. It's
right.
All of it is so relatable. And I remember the day of losing Chris thinking about it, being like, God, because this is such a weird fact, but I remember the message board saying, no, if EMTs get there, they don't leave the body. That's not a thing. That's not done. And that sure shit happened with me, where they left us with the body and they left a cop to sit with us because I had called 911. But I think about that a lot because I remember reading that was not a thing that EMTs were allowed to do, being like, oh, that's weird that they messed that up so much in the show, but thinking, but it's Sunnydale, so like extenuating circumstances with the amount of deaths per day per square foot. Sure, I can buy that they need to do it a little differently, but learning that was not wrong was weird, and that was like a weird and like the beginning of Joan Didion's book were the two pop culture-y things I kept thinking of when I lost Chris. Sorry, I know I just talked a lot.
The line for me that always sticks with me is when Tara says, it's always sudden.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it was a long road with my mom, but, I mean, and we even knew like 10 minutes leading up to it that she was going. But
yeah, your mom got sick before my mom.
It's always sudden. Yeah, it was a long road for her. But it didn't feel long. And it also felt way longer than it was at the same time.
Yes. You also did caretaking too. Like, I know it wasn't full time, but you still did it. And that does make it seem longer.
Yep. And just like, for us, she was in hospice care. So when she passed, we called the hospice nurse and they did everything for us. And she came out and sat with us and waited. So we were lucky in that regard because I was watching it this time around. So I've only watched it. This is the second time I've watched it since my mom passed. Oh. I'm coming up on 2 years, and it'll be 2 years and 3 weeks. And so I have been skipping it, but I did watch it on one of our like just watch throughs that we did, mostly because I was like, I just want to get it out of the way
Fair,
and
fair,
just
yeah,
watch
yeah.
it for the first time. And so watching it today and like really thinking about it, I was like, I can't imagine what it would have been like to have to do CPR on a cold body, and like just the extremes that she went through. I'm like, it made me feel like, oh, I got lucky that I
Yeah,
got
yeah.
to see my mom go the way she went.
Yeah. To your point, I probably have told you this before, Ashley, but when I called 911 for Chris, I was like, I'm not doing CPR. He is dead. Like, he was cold and hard, and I was like, I will lose my mind if I break a rib, is like really what I was thinking of. Like, I can't, I know that like he had a little bit of throw up around his mouth and was hard, right? When I touched him.
Yeah.
And I knew that I wouldn't be able to deal with if I like hurt his body. Like, I know that's like almost stupid because, like, well, he's dead. You were trying to, but I knew that I would
It'll
just,
always be in your mind.
yeah, like I'd be like, oh my God, I broke my friend's rib after he, like, I wouldn't be able to deal with that. And also, it was obvious he was dead. So I just didn't.
I think something that maybe a lot of people who haven't gone through this really understand, but it was the one thing that kind of set me off into like my grief journey was seeing the body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, because my mom was in hospice, she battled breast cancer twice. You know, she fought really hard. And it was like right after Christmas, it was like New Year's Eve. I had flown back from Florida where they lived to New York. Then they said it got bad. So that night I flew back and she passed. So the next morning we all went and we looked, we went to her hospice room, and I just remember seeing something that wasn't my mom, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like all of it is taken away and it's just like something else.
Yeah.
And that for me was just like the most like I watch a lot of horror. I'm not afraid of, things that are a little bit morbid, but that to me was the hardest point to like reconcile.
Yeah.
Liz, it's funny you say that because I think about that a lot too. How we are like, we're big horror girls, but like, it just, yeah, like the seeing, like you said, it's not the person. And I mean, that goes to when Buffy, like, I'm gonna fucking cry, Jesus. When Buffy says, like, you can't touch the body, and she starts crying because she realized what she said. Yeah, it goes into that a lot. Meredith, talk, because I'm gonna start crying.
I mean, it's really interesting hearing everybody's experience with this. One of the questions I asked Ian was, what is the timeline for all of us? Because when it happens, you don't think you're going to eventually be a Tara where you have some wisdom. Like there are like my mom died now, it was 2013. So that feels like yesterday, and it also feels like 20 years ago. And she had been sick with colorectal cancer for 4.5 years. In retrospect, she was diagnosed at stage 4. It was in not so great places by the time everybody out there, get your colonoscopy at 45. That's my I think, and it is sudden no matter how, right? Like, she was not in hospice. She'd gone to see Book of Mormon like a week before. It was just a sepsis infection that sort of took over. And when we went into the hospital, she had moved up to Boston, and we didn't know that was going to be the thing. And but my lens is, it's the same, but it's different. And it's, you talk about grief being not linear, and it's true. In the beginning, I wrote, and it's different for everybody, obviously. So the body I saw was one that was alive and then unconscious and then not alive, right? And sort of making these choices in the hospital about how much are you trying to resuscitate someone, and we're Jews, so actually we did cremation, which is deeply not Jewish. I shouldn't say we from what all the more religious Jews in my family, the few of them were like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, we're doing a different thing. But I I just keep thinking, like, what is this journey? What are the, you get to the place where, like, I would be like euphoric with great memories, but I think that took a few years. Well, I just felt it sounds like all of us were really close with our moms. And
Yeah.
you get to a place where you're like, oh my God, hopefully, but then, like, when my sister recently got a divorce, the grief I had that my mother was not there to have that conversation
Yeah. Yeah.
as a divorced person, not because I think she would have been like, she would have been helpful, but like, I wanted her to know, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
this happened, and these desperate moments of how are you not here? But I do think it's the specifics of that day, that morning for me, were played out in succession, like in a row, for probably the first 5 years after she, like, thinking about, then I did this, then we got this, then the doctor came in. I remember one nurse said to me, I remember her oncologist came in, and I was trying to figure out what was going on, and he said, Meredith, she's very sick. And I've actually heard that phrase now used with other people, like when they're saying the body is systemically sick. I was like, dude, yeah, I know. She's got stage 4 cancer. Of course she's very sick. But no, he was like,
Like, I fucking know.
I was like, yeah, but he was like trying to tell me something else. And I remember looking at a nurse who was like, she's given me everything in her face. And I trust those nurses to say, like, here's what's happening. And
Yeah.
I would like know every second, and thinking about those Buffy moments of, and replay it. And what if it had gone differently? And I have said to Ian many times that's a very real thing. And I think if you're a writer and a creator, which everybody here is, you're creative enough to imagine, what if it went 6 different ways? I would imagine I'd have fantasies about, like, what if they found this treatment for it? She was like already gone, right? And but that, I find that at 12 years, 13 years, whatever it is, the beat to beat play out is less. I don't know that that's a good or a bad thing. It's just more like the concept of, So I was interested to hear, like, it's not that it's not raw. It's always raw. It's just that, people said this to me at the time. I guess, and Ian and I were talking earlier to prepare for this, and I am now, so I turned 49 in the summer, and I have friends whose parents are aging. Some friends who are 10 years older than me, whose parents are very much aging. And I am watching a collective of people go through caregiving and loss all at once. And I'm feeling very like they were all there for me, these like friends. And because I was like one of the few people in that moment. Even in, being a bit younger, in my early 30s, like, and I can't be there for them in the same way. So I can't be the Tara for, every friend. So that's the thing I think about too, of just how grateful I am for probably all the taco salads people bought me that I don't even remember eating.
So every time when Ashley's mother passed and when Dana Piccoli's mother passed, that's what I do, because I remember that being the best thing someone could do. Is like, they gave us gift certificates to, like, DoorDash or Uber Eats. And that was like so helpful with me and my dad, because it'd be like, great, let's just order food. It doesn't matter how much it costs because we have these gift cards. Like, just, we'll spend, $80 on takeout from Olive Garden because sure, why not? And so, like, that's what I always try to do for people, because I feel like that is kind of the most helpful thing, right? Like, here, make sure you are eating. Let me make it easy for you, because putting something, even a sandwich together, feels insurmountable, right? Like, it feels like you just cannot do it.
Yeah, just like even trying to think of, like, what do I even have in this house? Was a lot. I'm lucky that also I come from a very large family, so we had people like in and out, but I just, like, none of us were really eating anything until the night after the funeral. And then I remember, like, somebody was like, you really should eat something. And I ate like half a piece of pizza. And by the time I got to it, I was like, oh my God, I'm so hungry, and then I just started eating everything. But we had so much food, and I'm like, I don't know what we would have done without
I have
that.
okay, you've just answered a question, but I want to know from you guys, like, I have never understood I'm so upset I haven't even thought to eat or can't eat. I think I was like eating a muffin while my mother was dying. But like, I'm just like, where is there a snack somewhere? So I do find it interesting. A lot of people tell me they couldn't eat. And honestly, we don't see Buffy eat ever that much
Yeah.
in life. But did you find that you were, are you, Laz and Ian, are you people who are like, no, I remember I'm hungry, or did you not eat?
I honestly don't even remember particularly like avoiding food. Um, but I think my mind was just like completely somewhere else. So I can't even like recall like if I was hungry or if I
That's
starved
fair.
myself or whatever it might be. So I'm not sure. It's a good question though.
It really depends. I feel like after Chris died, I didn't eat for like a week, maybe two. Like I would just have like a bite of something and be like, I'm good. But I feel like after my mom, I think I was eating a lot. Like I think I was just like, I'm gonna eat, so I don't think, and I'm just gonna keep eating, and I'll get a stomach ache because I'm gonna keep eating. I feel like my brain has like one of those two reactions to like stuff that's like really traumatic, where it's like either I can't eat or I can't stop eating. Neither are great,
Yeah.
but
I'm definitely the same way because I have a tendency to emotionally eat, but I think that I just was so like nauseous at the thought
yeah,
of and just like the grief. And so I was like, oh, I mean, I would, when people would bring me stuff, I would take like a bite, but we weren't
yeah.
like getting up and making ourselves plates or anything.
Yeah, I can remember stuff going bad that me and my dad got
Hmm.
because we were eating so little. Like being so grateful that, someone would bring us, my couple of my mom's friends brought us food that they made, but just neither of us was like eating it all. And like I remember being like, oh, this sucks. This like was homemade and this was very nice that they brought this, but now it's bad and I have to throw it away.
There's something to, I know that we're kind of bouncing around within the structure of the episode itself, but there is something really true about the body, especially that opening segment where it's like you're in such shock that everything becomes almost like mundane,
Yeah.
or
Yes.
like nothing but everything matters all at once,
Yeah.
Yeah.
where you
Yeah.
like notice like the sun, or you notice like the stupidest details that you would normally forget, but then you don't care about them at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really accurate, Laz. We talked about that a little bit in the recording for the body. I think about that a lot, how like you focus on one stupid thing. That scene of Buffy just like staring, looking like a corpse, sweating, staring outside, like that feels very real to me, where she can like hear things, but we don't even see them. And I listened to the commentary and Joss said it on purpose because it was like, no, you don't see, because she's not actually looking at these things that are happening. She's just like
She's in her head.
disassociating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And to your point, I was looking at some Reddit threads on this. And there was someone who had really good, like, oh, each character is a stage of grief, which I do agree with, but then said, like, but also she talks a little weird when she calls Giles. I don't understand why the person theorized that was like Joyce inhabiting Buffy's body to protect her and have her call her father figure.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I agreed with all of it until we got to this point. Because like I do feel like that's so common. I can remember having to talk to my super after finding Chris dead because we were waiting outside for the police to come. And I remember like standing there like this and just saying thank you a lot to him, and him just being like, okay, just let me know. Like, because of course he didn't know what the hell to say, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And I like think that is actually pretty common, right? Like the like not talking how you normally would talk.
Yes.
Totally. And there's also this thing of like, I don't know about you all, but I tried not to play out what would happen if my mom's cancer got worse. I knew that was probable. And
Yeah.
I think we all have different kinds of parents. My mom was not a stoic. I'm going to explain this to you. And I was more latchkey to last to your point, like where it felt I was with a mother spouse. But I had certainly played out in my head, what would I say if this happened? How would I feel if it happened? Where would I be? So I think that when Buffy gets weird phone voice, I always took that as like, you're performing this out of body thing that seems like it could not be happening. So you're almost like in a play of like you've dramatized this in your head and now you have to say it.
Yeah.
And so I bought that completely, and I thought it was really, I mean, like so many things in the episode, so smart, where you're like, am I even speaking words? Like,
Yeah.
This is
Do
what
I-
a woman
Mhm.
says when she's just walked in on her mother, not alive anymore. So
Right.
I have never done a really big Reddit deep dive on what people think it means, but that's
Well,
fascinating.
there's also something like rather psychological about it too, because at that point, when she's calling Giles to like come over, she hasn't accepted what's happened yet.
Mm-mm.
Right.
So she's in like a weird denial spiral.
Yeah. And we're
So
following her in real time.
yeah. So she's kind of like, just come here. Something's crazy. I can't fix it. I need help.
Yeah.
What's going on? So, oh, I'm gonna start crying.
Who are you,
Somebody
me,
else
Yeah.
Laz?
talk.
And she does it in as little words as possible because she does not have the brain power to do it. And I remember the moment that I knew my mom was going to die because she called me. had just gotten out of a work meeting that was in person and I was driving home. So I called her back and she told me, I've decided I'm not going to do treatment. I don't want to be sick throughout my last few years, and so I'm driving and I'm like trying to hold it together because I'm like, it's her choice. Like, I can't react while she's on the phone. And I drove home and I came in and all I said, my partner was in a work meeting and so I couldn't go in his office. So I texted him and I just said, I need you. That's all I could. And he was like, I knew something. He said something was wrong or you were super horny, one or the other. And so he came running as soon as it was over. But that's all I could think to say to get what is as fast as I could do. And then I just I got in bed and just laid there and cried until he came to find me.
Yeah. For me, it didn't even occur to me that could be anything other than that's what it is, because also Sarah Michelle Gellar's acting is so, I mean, all the time, but here it is so pitch perfect to that. And it's so specific too, right? I remember all the calls I had to make. So Chris and my mom were very different losses, right? Chris was, I walked into his room and he was dead. My mom, it was, her health, whatever. And yeah, I can remember with Chris, I remember calling 911 and then calling my mom 8 times in a row, and she was getting her hair done. So she did not answer her phone, and calling my dad. And this feels like such a weird TV moment because I was just I sounded like her. I sounded like a child, probably. I wasn't crying. I was just like, hey, dad. He was at work and I was like, Chris died. And that's all I didn't I just was like, hi, dad, Chris died. And he was like, what? And my dad is not equipped for this. So he said, did you call your mother? He was like, I think you should call your mother. And I was like, okay. And I don't even think I told him that I had tried a bunch of times. I just got off the phone with him and sat outside. Whereas with my mom, I remember when I called 911, like you, Meredith, my mom, it was she had the health issues, but those health issues, it was her diabetes actually, that she had a really bad low, and then that affected everything else. But my dad, I think I had just finished a recording and I walked out of the room and I said something to my mom and she looked at me and I was like, what? And I repeated myself and then I heard her not be able to speak. She sounded like she was drunk. So I was like, oh, I'm calling 911. And I went downstairs. My dad was making her food because she was hungry and she wanted to lay down. And they said the laying down actually made it worse because she had the breathing issues. And I remember him being like, what do you mean? No, I'm making her food. She's okay. She just is having a low. I'm just making her food. And I was like, no, absolutely not. I'm calling 911 right now. And I called 911 and I can remember fully disassociating because I was like, I never want to have to call 911 for a loved one ever again. And it brought back all those memories of Chris. And I knew that was it. I knew that this was the last time she was going to be here. And yeah, I remember sitting at the top of the staircase, and because of course, my dad forgot that he was doing the laundry, and it's an old, I don't think all houses do this, but you have to have the sink. It dumps all the water into the sink next to it. And he had put a laundry basket in the sink. So it had flooded our laundry room. Because after I called 911, I remember walking past and being like, what the fuck? And just seeing all this water pouring out of the laundry room. And it was just, he had stopped everything. And I didn't go with them. So my dad was like, do you mind cleaning the flood? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I didn't. I just sat at the top of the staircase for a long time. And I think I called Zach and was like, hey, I just had to call 911. And it's like very weird the disassociating you do of like, okay, this is what's happening. And I don't think I really cried till we were like watching her die in her room, honestly. So every character I do think represents a stage of grief. And I think Meredith, you make a very smart point, as you said, it's not linear, right? Like people think it's linear, but it really isn't. And sometimes you make a step to one of them and then you go back to the other one, right? Like it really is weird how that works.
And sometimes you don't actually even need one of the stages.
Right. Yes.
Like it's all circumstantial.
It's true.
You know, like I knew my mom was, on her way out a lot sooner than anyone else. She was a very secretive woman. She didn't tell my siblings anything until she was in hospice.
Mm.
So I was like the only person who kind of like knew, like me and my mom had like that kind of connection. I remember speaking to her over the phone. I was in New Jersey. She was in Florida. And she said something, and I was like, you have cancer again, don't you? And she was like, yes, I do. She's like, I made a trip. I'm going to see you for a week. She's like, I need to start doing my tour.
Ugh. Fuck.
So like, there are certain there are certain stages that if you know it soon enough, they become easier. But then there are other ones that become like so much more and take over so much more that it's like the craziest balance,
Meredith, we were talking about that earlier, so when my mom got sick, it was COPD, which her mother died of, right? Her mother lasted 12 years, though. My mom lasted like a year. And I can remember I had just finished working out with my Zoom trainer, Wes. And my dad was like, did your mother tell you what she has? And I was like, what? And I'm like sitting on the floor sweating. And he was like, she has COPD. And I was like, what? And he was like, but it's gonna get better. And my dad was like in denial the entire time. And I remember I like went upstairs and sat with her. And I think a lot about, damn it. The scene where she sits with Joyce in the hospital. I kind of like had that with my mom. Where I was like, I know what that means. And I was like, you can't leave me with these stupid men in our family. And that was the only time my mom cried the entire time. She like held my hand. But I think a lot about, when Joyce is like, you have to take care of Dawn. And they have that nice little like moment. I think about that a lot. And my mom always said that it made it easier for her to talk to me because I was the only one that kind of accepted that she was dying outside of her. Because my mom was also very like easy breezy. She'd be like, oh yeah, I'm going to die soon. And like, when same as you, Ashley, with my mom, I don't know if you remember, like if they kept her hooked up to everything, she would have stayed alive. But my mom said no. And I understood that. And I think that's the only time when my dad accepted it. And even my Titi Letty, she said, I thought your mom was exaggerating, Ian. And she was like, she exaggerates. And I was like, no, that is fair. I understand thinking that. Because, like, my aunt also had like knee issues, so she couldn't come down to visit a lot, but they talked all the time. And because my mom was so like, oh, yeah, I'm dying about it, she kind of assumed that, oh, well, she said, I have this fucking tattoo because my mom would say, I'm dying, Egypt dying, let Caesar's armies come, and then be like, do you know what poem that's from? Because it was her favorite poem from high school, at any inconvenience. So, like, she did say it a lot, but she told me I was the only one she could talk to that could talk to her normal about it. And I don't know, I had lost my grandma, who was my favorite person, Chris, who was my favorite person, and then here we are on favorite person number 3, and I kind of, I don't know, I just knew what it was, and I didn't want to lie about it at that point, because for me, that just makes it worse.
I don't want to martyr myself at all or imply that my mother wasn't wonderful because she was the best and
no.
But I think it's interesting, like she never got to a place where she was like, and I am going to die. Like even I remember thinking, oh, this woman has not redone her will. Like, she was a very mature single mom person, and yet this was a part of life. Death was a part of life that was just too scary, especially after she got sick. And I remember sort of convincing her to go get her will done because she hadn't done one since before her divorce. My parents got divorced when I was like 10, 9 maybe. So I was like, you got to get on this. But she was like, you think I'm going to die? You think I'm going to die? And I was like, no, I was like, I'm doing a will too. What was I going to will my one set of plates to like? But I.
Now you have the Edward doll that you need to put in the will.
Exactly right. Right. All my Twilight memorabilia and Buffy memorabilia. But she was not that stoic mom, right? So she was like, tell me it's going to be okay. And my sister and I also have delusions of grandeur probably about what we're capable of. So like, we truly believe we're like type A problem solvers. We will get it done. Like, my sister still rehearses, like, was this about too much chemotherapy? And I'm like, you weren't the oncologist. Like, you're
right.
You like majored in theater. Like, I don't know what you're like, but there is this, this story we told ourselves that we could fix it because we can fix anything. And I do wonder, like, Buffy's story with Joyce is so different because they think it's okay. Like, obviously they know there's this terrible surgery that they needed to do, and they are given a now you can rest. It sounds like none of us had now you can rest, but then the rug gets pulled out from under her. And I think actually being productive, my therapist always says productive is not a feeling. Hearing you talk about these moments is actually selfishly very therapeutic for me, because while I do visit productivity places in my brain about her, like, I'm thinking now about remembering that while she was dying in the hospital, she was unconscious. Like, we played a lot of music, and she was a piano teacher. So this would have been, and I always wonder, like, did she hear it? She had a very long standing crush on Sting. We went to see Sting together many times.
That's such a mom thing.
Oh, it's such a mom thing. And actually, after she died, I had to like find the passwords to all of her things, and I started realizing they were Sting song titles. So like, I'd be like, like every breath you take, like trying to figure out. I look like a code cracker, but I wish that, like, it is. I don't. One of the reasons I think it's like hard to go to those places of sadness is because so much of her illness was spent being like, here's the to-do list and here's that. So I think actually that first year or so, I was suddenly given the space, and certainly in that hospital room, to say, like, I remember my sister saying, there's no more work to be done. Like, this is it. And diving into that sadness and realizing how much I had compartmentalized it for so long during her treatment. And when I think about Buffy, obviously what Buffy experiences is always the extreme and the metaphor. She's still got to do the rest of all the other things. And my version of the rest of all of other things was not like having to like kill a god or whatever. Or like, I had no boyfriend who got into a helicopter, but it's like,
what a silly sentence.
Right, I know, right? But you still have to like be a person. And I never knew how much to be a person when she was sick. And I didn't quite know how to be a person again after. I'm not sure I ever really came back to how to be a person. And this is a total tangent, but when lockdown happened and suddenly the whole world was afraid, or some of the world was afraid, right? But there was a scary thing. I was like, oh, this reminds me of that in some way, of like, I just will sit here and have a feeling, which early in 2020, in that was fear, right? But I don't visit those places enough, probably, because they're still just as sad, and they're still just as, but they become like matter of fact, and it is, but it doesn't mean that sadness doesn't, and that panic and that memory and that trauma, it doesn't mean it doesn't affect everything I do. I was just saying to somebody the other day that I check in too much. I check in all the time. Checking in. And when I don't check in, I have a lot of panic. And that comes from a place, right? That comes from 4.5 years of the most heightened checking in. So,
yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. This is a long rambling thing, but I actually probably in a support group way to like see you react and like be closer to that memory. It brings it right to the forefront, but in a really nice way, where I'm like, no, that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To your point about checking in, so Chris had been dead for, they think like he died that night in his sleep, or no, he had been dead for a full day because he was very private and he didn't, if his door was shut, you did not knock on the door, you did not bother him. And me and Kevin that weekend had been away. We didn't get back till the next night. I remember texting him the day before we found him saying, "Are you alive? I haven't heard from you in a day." And that being the last fucking text I sent him, and I think about that a lot, how like weird that is. And I had a really tough time overcoming the panic of, and this is so stupid, right? Because this is something that happens. If someone didn't text me back for like a day, I'd be like, it happened again. Fuck. Like, and like, I remember once, I think it might have been during the pandemic, like yelling at Zach because it took him like 2 days. And I was like, I don't have anyone to crazy text to see if you're okay. So I just need you to be able to text me back because I got like fully paranoid that he had like died, which is like a crazy person thing. But, you know, yeah, I think I agree with you though, Meredith. Like in a support group way, it is like hearing the stories, like all of y'all's stories made me emotional. And they weren't my stories, but I was like, fuck. And it is sometimes there's something comforting about like, okay, even though they're all different, we still had these people can relate to the experience, even if it was different.
Yeah, I really relate to what you said about compartmentalizing, Meredith, because I moved back in with my parents part-time when she was getting really sick. Before hospice, but not too soon before. And so I would go and stay throughout the week, Monday through Friday. I would come home on Friday, Saturday, wash clothes, get a break, go back. And then once she got on hospice, I just stayed. I would come back every now and then to switch out stuff, but I was doing all of the med management, helping her go to the restroom, everything. And I think that part of that forced denial on me a little bit. Like it's not really denial, but just like not processing the fact that she was dying.
Because like that's not the front of your brain part.
Yeah, like I knew logically that's what was happening and that's what we were going through, but like emotionally I was like not dealing with it. And my mom and I had a very interesting relationship in the last bit of her life. She was definitely emotionally more close with my younger brother, so they had a lot of like heart to hearts about it. We talked logically about her dying, not so much emotionally about it. So like I remember her telling me like, all right, so when I go, like, this is the kind of coffin I want, and this is the budget. Don't let your dad spend more money than he needs to on that. And I want you to dress me because you do not let these boys dress me. I'm the only girl in my family. She was like, you're not, you know what I like. Put me in colors. Don't put me in black, So we had a lot of like logistical conversations, but not really like any kind of emotional discussions about it. And so when it came to the funeral, I was like, everything has to be I'm the one she told, so I'm the one who has to do everything. And then it was when we got home after the funeral and I ate that food and I sat down and it was just like all of the emotions of the last 2 years came on. Because she got diagnosed in 2022 in September and she died in April of 24. So it was a long couple of years. But then it was just like everything all at once, emotionally.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said about how others react to your grief.
Mm.
And I think that they cover that in this episode really nicely with like how everybody either like they just handle how they handle her.
Yeah.
In very different ways. Some overbearing, some trying to take away responsibility, some like Tara just sitting there and being like, hey, I get it. Like it happens. But that was tough in the aftermath. Because I think in our brains, especially if we've lost somebody that we love, there is this kind of, at least for me, there was this sensation of like, you guys need to start respecting, you know, the fact that mom is gone.
Hmm.
Like, I don't want to hear you guys like laughing or like going out to smoke weed or, do all this
No,
stuff.
that's
And
all I
like,
did.
but that, like everybody was like in their own like planet and nobody
Right.
was coming together.
Yeah.
And it drove me nuts because that was my mom's last wish.
Hmm.
And me being the eldest, I had to deal with like so many like components of this whole thing. I had to pick out like her urn. I don't even believe in like cremation or ashes or whatever. I had to, sit there and tell like most of our family, myself, what had happened because Laz is the oldest one. Like he's got to take responsibility now and be the man of the house. And I just found that everybody was just handling it in like very interesting ways. At the time I was angry. I think over time I realized like that was just part of their process, but I'm curious about like how you guys dealt with either respect or lack of respect, with your loss.
It's interesting because I had a committee of two. It was me and my sister, and we were kind of on the same page. And we would alternate between doing something practical, being sad and in shock, rethinking practicalities. And then we'd watch like 8 hours of Arrested Development. Like I think when I think about like we would just sort of like zone out, and there was this whole thing with right before my mom died randomly, my doctor was like, "How's it going with caregiving and that kind of thing?" And I was like, "I'm just very anxious." And she was like, "I'm writing you a prescription for Klonopin," which I filled but never took. And then my mom died like 2 weeks later. It was like really random, and I was like, "Oh, I have this bucket of Klonopin," and I remember being like, "Well, now is the time, right?" And I took one. And my ex-boyfriend had checked in and was like, "Should I stop by?" And he came over, and I think I was stoned out of my mind accidentally on this Klonopin. Klonopin has never worked like that again. I think it was probably lack of sleep,
Yeah.
dehydration, already being loopy. But I remember almost being accidentally giggly, where I was like, my ex-boyfriend is here with my sister. My mom is like, what is it? So I remember criticizing my own stuff. I think one thing that I remember very much about the body and what I thought about it after my mom died was, Joyce is a matriarch and a focal point for so many people. And I think my mother had been, whether it was a friend, a parent, had been a piano teacher. There were a lot of people who sort of also felt like they had dibs, and not in a way that was meant to, be more important than
Right,
my
right.
sister. But to know that suddenly there couldn't be a grief hierarchy. Like I was sort of like, you know, do whatever you want. Like friends of mine, like I remember months after she had died, my friend Jen had taken some of her plants, and she was really nuts about these plants. Like these plants had become her babies, and she's like, "This one isn't doing well." And I was like, "It's just dying. Like just let it." The plant, it's a house plant, and it's not something my mother had tended to. I don't think my mom would remember whether that plant was hers, but I had to let Jen have her grief
Right. Yeah.
about my
Yeah.
mom via this plant.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you mentioned that because I remember it must have been like a couple days after, and like it was like the hounds came out. They were like, I want this dress, I want this jewelry, I want that. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, my mom just died. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is wrong with you people? Like, I'm like, can we focus on like the reality of this and like, I don't know, like spend quality time together instead of just like looking out for ourselves? Like it was just so upsetting.
You
I can
know,
remember it like so clearly, including, my siblings. I have two sisters and a younger brother. And like all of them had their own journeys to do. and I'm being told in a letter from my mom, like, you need to keep the family together. It's like there's so much pressure that happens after like that moment of grief or that realization of grief. And then you're like, where am I at now? Like,
Yeah.
how did this happen? Like,
Yeah.
what am I
Yeah.
supposed to do with this?
That, I mean, again, that I go back to Buffy saying, "Who's going to take care of us?" Like, I think about that after my mom died. I mean, this is very Latino family, but like everyone's like, "Well, you have to take care of your father now," and it's like, okay, but who's going to take care of me? Like, and it's funny because all of y'all's reactions, my dad had the exact, my dad wanted to get rid of her stuff. My dad got rid of all of her clothes like 2 days later. And like Laz, it hurt my feelings so much because he was like, "No, I don't, let's get rid of it." And he wanted to throw away all her like statues, her dolls. He wanted everything gone. And, I do
That's
understand.
exactly what my stepfather did with my mom's stuff,
And I
which
do
is why
understand.
everyone went into a frenzy. They're like, let's take everything, let's rip it apart. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah. And like, I do understand that as, their own grief, but like, right, it is upsetting. Like, I just remember him bagging everything, everything's thrown in a box, and I'm like, what are we doing? What are we doing? I need to look at every single thing in every single one of these packages before we okay throwing any single thing away. And I'm still going through this shit. I gave all of like my lady friends, I gave some of my mom's jewelry to, like a set of hoops and then like random jewelry. My mom had a lot of fucking jewelry. There's still two curios of jewelry in the basement right now. I mean, lads, she had so many hoops, right? And my aunt decided last year, it has now been a year that my aunt is not speaking to me, my Titi Letty, because she was like, "You never gave us any jewelry." They came after my mom died, and they did help us get rid of a lot of stuff. And me and my dad both explicitly said, "Come and take whatever jewelry you want." She was like, "No, we'll get it later," because they didn't want to do it that day. And she never did. And so, because my best friend Kim posted on like Instagram the jewelry she got, my aunt told the whole family I gave it all away to my friend Kim. And like, that's just not true. And she yelled at me on the phone, being like, "I understand that she's your best friend, but she's not family." And I was like, "Yeah, she is. Like, my mom considered her a daughter. My mom wanted her jewelry to go to her." And then my aunt said to me, "I did so much for your father. I helped him pay for the funeral. I helped him take care of your mother." And I was like, "Okay, but you didn't take care of her every day like I did. And I also paid $15,000 at the funeral by fundraising through my podcast. So no, I paid for most of the funeral." And it fucking pissed me off because also, who cares? You're not owed any, like, it's so weird. And I just recently had a fight with one of my cousins because she asked me how I was doing. And I was like, "I don't know. It really sucks. It feels like the family abandoned me after my mom died because everyone decided that my aunt was correct, even though," and I sent her a picture, I was like, "These are full of jewelry." And that cousin got so defensive and told me that I was so rude, I was so nasty, I should rethink the way I talk to people. I fucking blocked her. I blocked her on Instagram, I blocked her phone number, I blocked her husband's phone number because she texted me from that. I was like, "I'm not dealing with any of you. I'm done." And like, it's weird. It's such a trope too. Like, I'm like, pick a new thing because this is a trope I've seen in like 100 movies.
I don't know. It is interesting. I think a lot about how my mom, before she died, not knowing she was about to die, or maybe something internally, who knows, stopped corresponding with her very best friend, a woman she met when she was pregnant with my sister, my older sister.
oh,
So this woman was pregnant. My mom was pregnant. They'd walk around Asbury Park, New Jersey, and they were lifelong friends. Now, do I think they had like friend baggage? Absolutely. I mean, one of them, this friend had certainly more money than my mother. My mom was a single parent eventually. And I'm not sure the friendship was that healthy in certain ways. I think for both of them. But I remember like it was probably a few months before my mom died. She's like, I don't really want to talk to her right now. This poor woman to not be spoken to by her best friend who has stage 4 cancer. And then my mom dies and she's like, she didn't talk to me for months, right?
Yeah.
Flies up for the memorial we had here. And I just think it was, I can't fault my mom. She was very sick, whatever. But it is, you talk about the people who sort of show themselves after a loss, right? Where like, yes, probably you're dealing with people who don't know how to process their grief, so they're mad at you about hoops. When sounds like there's hoops for all of us.
Plenty, yeah.
But yeah, like just this clarity of who is making you feel good, who's not making you feel good. To that point, and I wanted to ask about this, I feel like when I was caregiving and when my mom was sick, I was not kind to myself about here, I'm too tired to do this. I was constantly angry with myself for like not being able to do everything, right? Like live my life in my 30s because it felt like things were happening in my 30s I should be a part of. And now that we're in an era where the conversation has shifted to like, you protect your peace. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. You don't have to go out, where like you can work from home. Where I'm like, wow, if I could have borrowed some of this energy, where now I'm like, I think I've protected my peace so much that I need to shower and get out of my,
Right.
to a fault. And now I have to go back. But that was not part of the conversation in 2012.
Right.
You did it. It could have been my age. It could have been the world, but it was like, you go. Obama's president. I don't know what it was, but it was like, we're all going to go out. We're going to do everything. And I was not kind enough to myself, and probably not kind enough to myself even the years after her death, about like, you can't do that. Just sit there. That's fine. Like, that's part of grief too. The sort of just like being stunned all over again.
To your point, I think of that shot of Willow. Just when we first see Willow and Tara, Willow is just, it's like silence, right? And
she's zoned out.
I think about that a lot because that is also very true.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like it's also accurate to go from the zoned out, as you said, Ashley, to then wildly crying about not finding the right shirt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember before Chris's funeral, Jason, who is on the podcast a lot, him knocking on the door, being like, "Can I come in?" Because I was in the bathroom and I was in my underwear. He was like, "Hey, you've been getting ready for 2 hours. Do you want to finish getting dressed?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, I know." And I was like, "I know it sounds like cliche, but I want to make sure I look like really good for the funeral." And he was like, "You do. It's fine. Do you want me to help you?" And I was like, "No, just like sit in the bathroom with me, please. Don't leave the bathroom, because now that you're here, you can't leave the bathroom." And like feeling like, well, I'm in control of these like 4 tiny walls. My friend is here. Let's just stay right here. But like also understanding he was very kindly being like, we need to leave for the funeral for our friend. So yeah, I feel like all of them are relatable, even though they're all having wildly different reactions, right?
Yeah.
I think something you mentioned just now is like really fascinating to me, in that like it's like when you lose somebody, like, particularly a mom, like I lost my mom, there's almost a point within that where you start to try and embody the energy that they provided you
Yeah. Yeah.
to like everyone else, where it's like, oh, they're not here anymore. So then you like hyper obsess with like, well, now I have to be that. So that's what I'm gonna do. Like, I know what it looks like. That's what, I'm just gonna take charge, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna be sassy and tell people, what they have to do and where to go and cook and clean and blah, blah, blah. So there is something interesting about that.
Yeah. I definitely thought about that with my grandma. Because my grandma was very weirdly progressive for her age, and like also very, I don't give a shit. Like, my favorite story is going to visit her in hospice and, pick whatever fucking Trump Nazi controversy, and her saying, he's going to meet the wrong Latino and they're going to kill him. And I was like, Grandma, you can't say that out loud. We're in public. And she was like, what are they going to do? Kill me? I'm already dying. Who cares? And like, that was like how she was about everything. When it was the end and I went to see her and I had gotten dumped, and she kept asking where he was, and I was like, well, and I was finally like, well, he broke up with me. And she was like, did he know I was sick? And I said, yeah. And she grabbed my arm and went, I have good money in the cabinet. And she told me exactly which cabinet in her house where she stashed cash. But I think that's like an old people thing, right? Like having cash hidden somewhere. Yeah. And she was like, go to the Santeros in New York, not in New Jersey, because here they're fake. In New York, they're real. Put a curse on him. And I was like, I appreciate the thought. I'm not going to do that, but and like
that.
I do try to like, my mom was kind of a lot of the same, And I try to embody that. My grandma just didn't give as much of a shit. Like my mom also didn't care, but my grandma really didn't care. And I try to embody that, but also, as all three of you know, I care all the time about every stupid fucking thing. But I do try to think like, oh, my mom would say, oh, fuck them. My grandma would say, who cares?
Mhm.
And like want to embody that, but don't quite get there.
Yeah, I do a really good job of like giving other people that, but not
Yeah.
myself.
Yes, because Ashley also cares about all the things.
Yeah. But to go back to what Meredith had said about like go, go, go and like the difference in society, that's just who I am as a go, go, goer. And so I did have people often telling me, like, you need to slow down. Like, you're going to need to take a break. Like, you got to ask for help. I remember because I mean, I just did it all and I would do it. I worked from home. So I got really lucky with my situation that I was able to just stay with my mom, still do my job, take care of her. And then when my brothers would come home, like they would sit with her and I would go help with dinner. And like, so it was just like, go, go, go until she went to bed. And then I still did my podcast. I didn't take any breaks at all from Why Are We Like This? And
you also didn't take a break from editing. I remember being like, Ashley, and you were like, no, I want things to do.
I can do it. I can do it all. But I also remember particularly Amends. You were covering Amends. And I remember sitting in the dark next to my mom, editing that and like falling asleep and having to go back 5 minutes and falling asleep and having to go back 5 minutes. It took forever to edit because I just kept going to sleep. But I did have the pressures from the outside to take breaks.
Meredith, I can remember, I think it was after my mom died, saying something to you and you being like, oh, listen, I'm Jewish. I do well with a to-do list. And like you saying like that helped you a lot after your mom passed, like having things that to come up to do.
Well, I think it depends on the person, but I do think, it's like right at the moment where you can't do anything, you suddenly have to do everything. So you have to make these arrangements. Like maybe somebody's going to step in and do it, depending on the family. But because I have a friend right now who just lost her mother last week, and her mother was, probably close to 90. But she's like, there are these gaps of time where she's like, I'm planning something, I'm not, what am I supposed to be doing? And she's just watching a lot of Schitt's Creek. But like, there's like, it is, I think, a little helpful that there's some stuff to do or to think about. Having to call people is the worst. All these things are terrible, but sometimes the smallest task that feels fairly mundane is like a lifesaver in that sense. Laz, I have to say, I was thinking about how more after I lost my grandmother, my dad's mother, who was awesome, I found myself being like, well, I will do these things that she would do or sort of lead the group in a certain way like this. Years later, after my mom died, I am now aging into this person where some of my most annoying mannerisms, I'm like, oh, I know where that comes from. And I can't explain to you the way in which I watched my sister becoming my mother, but I feel like it wasn't until like it might be perimenopause. And now I'm looking back and I'm like, was she so annoying? Because she actually could not, she had brain fog. I didn't talk to her about it at the time. She always used to do a thing that as a teenager drove me up the wall. Anytime we got into a car, she would put the window down just a little. And it was just like this hissing of the air. And I'd be like, can you close it or
that
open
would drive me nuts.
And like, anytime I go into a car, a little bit down now. And I'm like, what am I doing? But it is so at first it felt more like I am trying to live these values of hers that I love so much. And now I have this fun laughter with myself where I'll start talking to the person at the coffee shop and I can tell they just want to work, but I'm like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh no. Or, oh yes, to be Leslie Goldstein instead of Meredith Goldstein for a few minutes also feels like a gift.
There is something really interesting about what you just said because it's true. It's like in the beginning, you're trying to like fill in a role, but like my mom's been gone for nearly 10 years now. But now, like over the past like year, maybe year and a half, I'm starting to realize that I have like because similar to Ian, like my mom was a sassy, fiery Latina. She said everything that was on her mind, probably a little more like Ian's grandma, but I've become that person, and I used to be so docile. I used to be so like quiet and kept to myself and like afraid of the world. And as I'm getting older, I'm like, oh, I'm like, this is what's going on. I'm like, that's where mom is. Now she's in me in like this weird loop where now I'm turning into that person, not because I'm trying, but because it's just happening naturally.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. It's like in your being.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how to tie this up, but I'm gonna tie it up. At least we didn't have to fight a vampire, I guess. I always think of like, God, does Buffy really have to fight this fucking vampire now? Like, God. When I get to that end, and I think of the commentary of how it purposely feels like a worse fight than any other vampire has in a very long time, and how like no one has any weapons, and we discussed this in the recording how the man's naked, so that also makes it worse. Dawn's like a little kid,
Yeah.
and like the way Buffy is just kind of grabbing at his face. Like even Buffy's not quite sure how to fight because she's forgotten how to do something that is very natural to her, right? Something that she
Yeah.
does every fucking day, 100 times a day. And I don't know, I mean, like, it feels like it's a really good, that's when it's a metaphor, right? None of the rest of it, the rest of it is kind of just one for one. This is grief. This is what it is. Everyone has different feelings. That's more like the metaphor of like how you
Right.
feel. And I think that is a good way to kind of tie up the episode, at
I'd
least.
have to look this up, but I did find a weird fact. So the sweater that Willow obsesses about, that she's trying to find, that blue sweater, is supposedly the same sweater that Tara wears in that infamous episode.
No, I don't think it
It looked
is.
brighter to me, but the lighting could also be different.
That's true.
Ugh.
I've seen that reported in a few ways, so let the internet do its interneting.
Are you kidding? I'm like trying to, I have the episode downloaded on my computer. I'm trying to bring it up right now. Okay, it's not, but it does look more like it than I remembered.
I mean, it could be designed to or bought to evoke that feel.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be in homage to that's
Sometimes
really interesting.
Sometimes I think about that stuff, and I know that like I have so many answers of Cynthia Bergstrom or Matt Van Dyne's where I don't know, that was the fashion then, Ian. Like,
Yeah.
like I always thought I figured it out, and fucking Sarah Michelle Gellar in Becoming, under that blue jacket that we all love, she was wearing what she wore in Scream 2 because those pants look exactly the same. She's wearing a brown heel, and I asked Cynthia, and she was like, "No, it was just the fashion at the time." Like, because she was like, "No, because this was shot then. There's no way that outfit would have made it to the Scream set in time between whatever when it was filmed." And I was like, well, she would know better than me just guessing that it is the same thing. And I've actually had people on Slayerfest comment to be like, "Oh, fun fact, did you know it's the same?" And I'm like, nope, it is not, because I asked the costume designer. But sometimes the fashion just like, I don't know, like works really well. I don't know. But thank you all for doing this. Thank you for having this like group therapy session. Meredith, thank you for talking to me earlier to help kind of plan this. Laz and I kind of had been talking about, we needed to talk about this since I started. I feel like since last season we talked about doing something like this. But yeah, thank you all for doing this.
I just want to say one overly positive thing, which I've had this thought. I don't know, who knows why, but I'm sure that some people listening to this episode specifically have gone through this or whatever. But I just like what good kids we are. What loving!
Right.
I mean,
You're
I
right.
don't say that to my. I'm pretty hard on myself, but I was thinking about the three of you, and I was like, "What wonderful children these people were to their mothers." Without even knowing two of you really well, like I just the empathy and time spent and care and humor that and feeling that I see when you talk about your mothers is overwhelming. And
God damn it, Meredith, don't leave us with us crying.
no, but then I was like, what if I'm not so different than them? And I just was thinking, not to be cheesy, but what a good group of kids.
Oh, Meredith. That's really fucking sweet. And yes, you also were a very good kid. You talked about this all the time.
Oh, good kids.
I can remember my mom coming up on the stair escalator and telling her the story that you told me of you and your sister laughing because you both spent a day looking at your mom's vagina trying to get the needle in, and how you both like was just like a moment of like, well, we both cracked and we both just laughed hysterically. And I remember telling my mom that story as I'm helping to get her to bed and her laughing, being like, yeah, because my mom took care of her father and she had to change his diapers. And she was like, yeah, that's how that is sometimes. Like sometimes you're just looking at it, you're looking at that stuff, and then you think, huh, I'm looking at my parents' stuff. And so you also gave my mom a laugh with your story of helping your mom.
That means the most, yeah.
Thank you all for doing this. This was sad and therapeutic and very nice. And thank you all for listening to this very sad episode. We'll see you next time. Bye.